Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday morning in Sweden, and we have left Gävle, the city of Gävle, and we are heading southeast. Going to make our way back down to the coast. Eventually get down to around the airport. But on this road, I wanted to point out a few things that you might find of interest. And interestingly enough, I don't have examples of it at this very moment. We just passed quite a few. See the lights on the right of that bicycle path? Even out here in the country, they have some great lighting, especially, of course, for the winter time. And it looks like there's a train track on the left-hand side over here. But the lighting in the country on the bicycle paths is pretty unique. Here's another stretch of night lights, and we know that there's a great bicycle path over there, although this little motorcycle here is using enough of the shoulder to provide his path for transportation.
Moose fence.
Okay, here's the second item I wanted to show this morning. Can you detect the fences on both sides of the road? Back about 12 feet or so, maybe more, maybe 20 feet here. Guess what those fences are for? I would say they're definitely here to prevent moose kill. Those fences are large enough to prevent the moose population from reaching the paved highway. Every once in a while you see gates in the gap of a fence, but otherwise there doesn't appear to be a lot of homes in some of these areas where the fence exists. And here's another good example of the radar trap. Oh, that was quick. The camera sign was camera was located very quickly after the image of the camera. Here's a good example of the third item I wanted to show you. See how the trees are much smaller there on the left? That's been an area, it's not very large, probably only 4 or 5 acres, that have been clear cut and replanted with trees. Here's another one on the right. The Swedes are pretty good at rebuilding a renewable resource of trees and lumber. Let's see.
Gotta go left.
Here's a perfect example of the clear cutting. What we haven't found out yet is why they leave some of the trees still standing. Maybe I can get back to you later on that subject. Again, we see a large area with rocks and most of the tall pine trees cut, but there's the white birch tree and the tall pines here. They leave some of them for some reason, and we will try to find out that information for you and report to you later. But this is all of their excellent reallocation of the same property for growing more pine trees. Okay, for all you southern Texas farmers out there or wherever you're at, this happens to be corn being raised in this area of Sweden. I've seen this before on Gotland Island, but this is, I think, the first time I've seen it on the mainland. We are fairly close to the ocean, to the Baltic Sea, and that could be the reason. This nice flat land in here that's been clear cut once, and
Oh, those geese.
oh, that's a lot of geese out there. Yeah, you have to call those Swedish geese
Goodness.
and not Canadian geese. This looks more like a wheat field or something here. So this is definitely good fertile country farmland. What good Swedish video must always have is some good views of the hay marshmallows. This one has a nice old barn out there. That white looks so bright. I assume it's just simply a plastic wrapping over the baled hay. Along here you can see another good example of the fence to keep the moose off the highway, as well as some nice little rock bluffs that this road encounters here, and some more big boulders. This gives me the indication that we're away from that good farmland we were viewing. Well, on our journey this morning, we come to the little town of Forsmark. Looks like there's an old school here. And a number of residential places. In our journey this morning, we stopped at this little community called Forsmark, and it has a little inn. Wardhus is the Swedish term for a inn, I-N-N. So we had some fika here this morning. This nice little lake here by the little lunch place called the Wardhus. This nice little bridge. Look at those rocks that make up this bridge. It must be an old bridge. Several buildings in this town were erected around 1800. This one says 1803. And happens to be the local museum. Also here we discovered an interesting item. It's called a milestone, and I'll let you read it, and explains why it was called Forsmark in this area. And this is what the milestone looks like. Looks like it was erected in 1800. To indicate 14M. Not too sure about the rest of that, but we've read already that it's 140 kilometers from here to Stockholm. So let's call it 14 million meters from here to Stockholm. Here also we found this really neat street straight up to the Forsmark Church, with houses on both sides of the little road. Okay, here's more of a close-up view of the very nice little Forsmark Church. I'll have to look up this on our Swedish American website to see if we have any immigrants from Forsmark. Notice the beautiful work of the wall builders. Those rocks are pretty huge, and they're really stacked nice and flat. There's the customary church cemetery. Let me also give you a close-up of one of the houses here. I'll back away a little bit. If it's correct, we read that there's 59 inhabitants in Forsmark. But I'd like to show you a little bit more of the rock wall. Looks like they're doing some cutting along here, but there's another house and a beautiful rock wall. Here's another close-up view of these magnificent walls here in the town of Forsmark. Plus to give you a view of how thick it is. Now that's a wall. Well, we always seem to make our way to the beach. Again, this is still the Baltic Sea that we're looking at. See a couple of sailboats out there. It's pretty breezy, but we do have a nice bright sunshine. We are located, I'll show you a ship in a few minutes. We are located at a place called Chapaskar. It happens to be a port for car and truck ferries out to an island that's about halfway between Sweden and Finland. At the moment, I can't tell you what the name of the island is. I'll have to look that up. But we are at the Baltic Sea again, just north of Stockholm, of course on the east side of Sweden. Okay, now with our backs to the sea now, across the road here is where we see some of the ships that sail out and over to Finland. We are going to take a ride further down the peninsula here, see what we can find. Okay, here's another view of the port area that takes cars, trucks, anything out to the island between Sweden and Finland. And I'll have to look it up to see if some of these routes from here would go directly over to Finland as well, which I think makes a lot of sense. Quite a complex here, but interestingly enough, there's no town in this area. There's no facilities. Okay, here we stopped in the little town of Norrtälje on the E18, and we're looking for a place to have a afternoon lunch. Okay, we found a little place called the Little Dublin Irish Pub. The specialty happens to be fish and chips. Okay, here's a small entrance to the Irish pub that we had a very delightful lunch in. Interesting fire chimney behind it, like from a manufacturing plant or something. This place had a movable roof, which was really neat to see. A continuation up the old town square road. Beautiful houses, which are now all shops and restaurants. And lo and behold, at the old square, looks like it's a bank now.